Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Marshall here, and I've got a 1 versus 1 for you. Nothing like the game we had last time, with lots of planets, lots of explosions, lots of nukes. This is going to be a more competitive 1 versus 1. On the south spawn here, we've got Flubb in his typical pink. You see the build there, he's going bots first, air, P-gens, P-gens, air, P-gens, P-gens, air, P-gens, P-gens, naval, P-gens, P-gens, P-gens. Of course, you need the power to be able to support your factories, so getting that with your commander as you do this build will be able to keep optimizing the commander's movement and build patterns so that he's walking as little as possible, but over time gradually getting towards the water. Getting out the combat fab thereafter as well. I've got the picture-in-picture so you can see what's going on. And on the north spawn here, we've got Nikola in lovely blue. Bots first, air second with P-gens there. Slightly different build this time though in terms of what the actual queue is. Looks like we had a slight misclick there with the metal extractor. So he's a sliver behind in terms of his overall build. Having said that, perhaps not. Looks ever so slightly ahead. Of course, you've got the two fabs out, then the combat fab to reclaim the com for that extra boosted metal. You can see Flubb up there to 64, Nick up to 40-ish, 50-ish or so. Doc's moving around, try and lock down some early mechs or pick off some early fabbers. A little bit of audacity there from them. Of course, this is Meso, for those of you unfamiliar with it. Good old 1 versus 1 map. Lots of naval possibilities. Usually a very heavy air presence is required to win this game on this map. Of course, around the backside here we've got the token metal deposit there. This island is the one that you really want to be careful for. It's got so much metal there, and it's a nice early rush opportunity for people with air fabs. So if you can get some air over there to scout it, then do so. As if, of course, you managed to pick off one of those fabs, you will be laughing. Smare coming in here. How many butts will this bomber pick up? Only one. So that's a little bit fortunate for Flubb there that more fabs were not killed. So we'll still be expanding with full force. 2 fabs there is good enough. The build will be quick. You are now Nick, though, going into the water there with his fabs. Usually only just about reach the naval factory, so you need to be careful with their placement. Meanwhile, Flubb, of course, still getting down his build queue that he's set up nice and early. Of course, having a long build queue like this has its drawbacks, but it also has its advantages. Advantage being that he can now set and forget his command. He can leave that and he can focus on every so often popping back to a new factory, setting the build, and then focus on microing his forces. He needs to be able to do this so that he doesn't lose them early in the game and can see and can save them for as long as possible. You see there, getting a nice little bit of scouting out. We can see Flubb, what he can see now. You can see all the factories, so he knows double air, naval, and bots. Flubb is like, yep, okay, so I've got the early air game sorted with 3 air factories, unless I haven't seen one. Let's have a look at what Flubb has been scouted for in terms of Nick. Nick sees the triple air factory, and will no doubt be getting up another air factory later on down the line. I'm going to zoom out of Flubb a little bit there so we can get the full picture. Some piranhas coming out of the naval factory there. Nice fast early naval raiding unit, just picking up any early naval fabs. They also give you a nice little bit of vision as well. So as I was saying earlier, with the massive air micro necessity on this map, you need to try and conserve your air as much as possible, and of course focusing to try and kill off those fabricators as much as possible is also important. Apologies for the scope there. Flubb did manage to pick up the fab there, so it's only 1 metal extractor down, so every little helps. Of course, Nick on this side, though, has made up for it a little bit. Flubb, of course, still reclaiming his com. Nick has decided not to bother continuing with that. His combat fab is over here, doing not a lot. I think that might have been a miss micro. There's a second one over here collecting some Trico, so his economy will be sort of up and down a bit. But he's not in the red, so it's okay, and as long as he's not floating eco, then there should be no problem. See the Piranha's getting a little bit of action in there. Taking out a few early attempts at expansion and a nice air fab pick there. T2 air attempt here from Flubb. Will Nick see this and go for it? He doesn't, but he does trade the air game nicely. He gets off another couple of air fabs. Continuing to halt Flubb's expansion. What's he doing on his side? He's going T2 air of his own. A couple more Barracudas out now as well. Flubb deciding, yeah, it's time to go for some vehicle transition too, to lay some pressure on the land. Of course, in this sort of scenario where you do have a planet such as this, of this scale and metal, of this diversity and spread, you do need pressure in as many places as you can give it. So you've got the Barracudas coming out now in the water. You've got the air games that will be continued to be traded and contended for. And of course you also have the land. A lot of people tend to forget the land on a map, like particularly MISO. It's quite challenging because you have to balance naval, air and land, and so most people tend to opt for heavy air and heavy naval and sort of move off the land if they're pressured there. They don't tend to re-expand or try and hold the land. And we can see here kind of the illustration of my point. We sort of had those early raids and nothing really more from it. There's a few docks there nicely from Flubb though, which is going to take down a few mechs. But, you know, there's not a lot else really going on the land. There's air micro, and arguably the naval micro is just so much more important. The T2 naval out now from Nick, and the T2 air complete as well. T2 naval probably see cancelled unexpectedly. I was going to say T2 naval, possibly some Leviathans depending on the build of the other player. Maybe Kaijus, possibly Stingrays for their anti-air capability. And Typhoons, of course, rarely used. And quite a heavy metal investment for not a lot of output, arguably. Kestrel's coming out now, though, and some defense necessary from Nick, as we see the tanks pushing out here, though the Kestrel will be able to pop in and mop all of this up. Not before a mechs does get taken down, however. Moving towards a Galata here, seeing, okay, well, I can defend against that raid, and I can arguably do some raiding of my own, although here, though, nice air trade there. Nick with some air micro, fantastic on the retreat there, I do believe has the advantage with the Phoenix. That's fantastic. Fantastic trade for Nick. He will be very, very happy with that. Still some more air fabs coming out. And a second T2 air factory. Look at how many air factories we've got here, though. Aside from the second one, we've got 5 plus the T2. Next side, how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 plus a T2 and a second T2 plus the T2 naval. So Nick really is investing heavily there, although Flubb has a slightly higher T1 air count. It's all about those trades later on into the game if you have a comparable factory count. You have some nice expansion on the South Pole here, though, from Flubb, with some air fabs there. Of course, if you can get some sneaky air fab expansions, why not? You know, go for it. If you can get those metal extractors up, all the power to you. You know, if you can manage it and your opponent is preoccupied with his air somewhere else, then get that mechs up. It'll most likely pay for itself, particularly on a map of this size, before it gets killed, so the investment is more often than not worth it. A few Barracudas coming in, though, laying a little bit of damage to the air factory. Air fab taken down, and the commander is left trying to build it, so it won't at least decay. Barracuda's going a little bit too close to that comm, a little bit too close to the home turf here, arguably. Of course, general rule of thumb, unless your attack is actually going to do something, you don't have to attack. You can contain. And still the air lingers ready for more trades. You've got all the hummingbirds at the front there. This time, though, from Nick, we've got some peregrines in the front. Not peregrines, Phoenix. There haven't been peregrines in a long, long time. The Barracuda's pushing in on the top there as well. Although again, you see the home turf advantage. Barracuda's coming in to defend. Although we need a few bombers to be able to deal with these last couple. What we've got here, a couple of naval fabs will go down, and that will impede greatly the... good move there from Nick. Getting in that air fab to support it in case the naval fab goes down. Fortunately enough, it didn't, but still. Now looking around the map, we have a lot of metal expansion from Flubb. Nick doing a little bit of his own on the top and actually getting to this lovely, lucrative metal site on that side, although you know, there's a lot of raiding that can be done here, and Kestrels are the ideal weapon to use for this sort of distal metal expansion raiding because of their damage output. Coming in though, baiting an air trade here. The Kestrel's coming in though, and that makes them a little bit vulnerable there from Nick. Fortunately the air trade was in his favour, but if it wasn't he would have lost all those Kestrels. And he did anyway. He's only got 2 left, and those came in after the fact. He lost about 4 Kestrels in that engagement, which really wasn't great. He could have left those behind. But still, it is an interesting move there, rushing in with his air to try and get a good engage while catching his opponent off guard. And then running away once he's had the engagement. So that keeps him ahead in the air game. He still has his Phoenix advantage here. Whereas Flubb's air is now reset again. So it's a nice way to keep on top of your opponent's air game. And it was good as well because Flubb's air wasn't being microed at that specific second when the engagement happened, and so he got a little bit of an advantage in terms of baiting the air out, kiting it just a little bit before the full engage took place, at which point he circled his air back and retreated a little bit, allowing the air at the back to cycle forward to do their shot and then run away. That's some nice armies formulating from Flubb now as well, elsewhere on the land. We'll follow those in this picture-in-picture here as they do their little bit of raiding. And they will take down a large number of metal sites there as well, not insignificant. 4 mechs, potentially even putting some factories under threat as well. Some more Phoenix being traded there, and Nick taking not so great engagements now all of a sudden. His Kestrels still survive, and a bomber too. But at the same time, he's lost out on his air advantage and so perhaps needs to retreat here. And he's stalling a little bit on his metal as well, so his air isn't being replenished quite as fast as he'd like, perhaps. And realising, maybe I should come back and defend against this little land incursion here. Meanwhile, I'll have that picture-in-picture now on the other side of the map, so you can see the expansions and what happens there. Kestrel's coming in now as well with bumblebees to mop up these tanks, but not before he lost all those mechs. Now this is great. This is what a lot of players struggle to do later on into the game. Get out and re-expand. If you lose some expansions, just go out and get them back. You know, if your opponent, if you defend the raid, although you've made some losses, your opponent is unlikely to have another army ready to immediately follow it up, and so a lot of people feel psychologically contained when they've been raided. No, just go out and re-expand again. Likelihood is you'll get the cost value out of your expansion. Here, not so great from Nick, running in kind of single file with his air, while Flubb's nicely bulked up and running over some Galata in retreat. Not so great. He will lose all of his Kestrels here, so Flubb will take back the air control. Naval still very stagnant in terms of battles there. Quite docile indeed. Barracudas kind of staring each other down. Flubb has a nice grouping there. And so as Nick's come into range one by one with a rally point, that must be. Yeah, they've got a rally point to there. And so he's just sending in his Barracudas to get mopped up nice and easily there. Smorka's coming around the long way, though. Unprotected in terms of their air. Some more raiding going on. So you want to maybe have a narwhal or two with your navy, because narwhals are just so strong against air. They really, really are. Up to a third T2 air now from Flubb, though, and a third one from Nick. He's got his kaijus ready as well to pressure on the land. So Nick should, by all accounts, be ahead in the air game. In terms of the economy game there, he most certainly is. He's got his T2 up in his base. Flubb still has yet to do so. And that is where that disparity in the eco lies, as well as this island here, although we got a couple of docks pushing in. They could potentially shoot down the air fab, but here comes Flubb with a big raid here. This could be costly for Nick. Going to have a lot of mechs coming down, and you see there the power of the Kestrels. Just for a quick raid, even 2, you can drop in and drop out again. A really nice, quick and efficient raid. And that is why T2 Air has crept into the meta in recent months. Lots of air now, though, from Nick. Kind of spread out for a while to make Flubb think, I don't really need to chase this down. But all the while, actually keeping numbers very, very high indeed. Grouping them up. And here we go for the air engage. Looks like it should favour Flubb here. But Nick managing to pull out there with a good number of Phoenix. I think Flubb didn't really have so much T1 cannon fodder there. The Barracudas, though, doing a little bit of damage to some of these air factories. If you're wondering why it seems so dark all of a sudden, I have decided to start using Dark-ish Nights mod, which, as you can see, kind of makes this side a little bit more of a contrast when it's not facing the sun, which is nice. Now looking at the raiding damage on this side though, just briefly. Flubb there, managing to take down all of that mechs. Meanwhile though, in the main, we've got Kaijus pushing in on his base, and these could do damage. Unfortunately, they're not supported by air. Here comes the air now, Now, though, from Nick to support, Flubb's air again evaporates, and the comm concedes. Perhaps a premature concession there. And the economy was at quite a difference, but I feel Flubb could still have pulled back from that. He just needed T2 in his base, which is where he really neglected to get T2 metal extractors in his base, and that was what was setting him back and preventing him from getting a lot of more air factories there. If he'd kept up with air factory production, that was still very much a game in the balance. Having those Kaijus could easily have been defended by the Kestrels, therefore, if he'd had the air game. And I think the fact that he just saw the Kaijus appear and realised he was far behind in terms of T2 naval. He had 3 Kaijus on the way to the base and no T2 naval even queued there. I think is where Flubb thought, I can't really do this. I haven't kept up with the air production. Let's count the factories here towards the end. Just pausing briefly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 T1. 3 T2. Let's have a look at Nick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Plus T2, 3 T2. So yeah, he had the massive, massive advantage there. Still an interesting game and a lot to be learned for the these sorts of maps. Quite big, diverse metal, a variety of strategies on offer, and of course also where you have to balance everything you're doing at the same time. And of course notice how these players, their strategy isn't to snipe the commander, it's not necessarily to kill the commander outright, it's to try and gain an upper hand and then let the snowball roll. Of course Flubb tried to get back in the upper hand by doing some raiding of the expansion, which is nice. There's a lot of what people tend to do, specifically in the newer players to the games. You get tunnel visioned on the enemy base and you just have to whittle away at it, you have to whittle away at it. But no, if you expand and you whittle down your enemy's expansion, you can then hammer away rather than whittle away. And that's what's important. All the same, that was a good game. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I've been Marshall. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to pop a like if you liked it, and have some discussions in the comments below as well. This replay was sent in to me, so if you have some PA game replays that you're particularly proud of, or that you think are really good games that everyone would learn stuff from, then do send your PA stats link to me, either on the forums, or if you see me in the PA chat, you can send it to me there. You can send it to my Steam, send me a message on YouTube, or catch me on TeamSpeak or the PA Discord even. But anyway, I'm nattering on. Thanks for watching, folks, and as always, have a good one.